results and what we can do to support our students. So if you've got any questions, I may not be able to answer them all. In fact, I know for sure I probably won't be able to answer them all. But if you've got any questions during the live stream, please post them and we'll try and answer them. And actually somebody else on the live stream may be able to answer them for you. Thank you for the Chartered College of Teaching for hosting this session and opening this discussion for colleagues. I'm aware that there could be a big audience in terms of a wide range of different people here, and that might include parents and students. So please ask as many questions as you can, and we'll try and answer them in the time we've got. So the live stream for colleagues who are part of the Chartered College, the live stream has been recorded and will be made available on My College over the next few days. And you'll find other recordings and resources on that platform. So a little bit about myself. I'm a secondary school teacher from Bristol in the southwest. I've been a science teacher for 25 years and I've had various roles, including the head of science, head of year, and now part of the senior leadership team in my school and looking at year 7 and transition. So that's kind of what I've done. I've just followed the route through chartered teacher qualification, which I got this year. You will know that I'm not an expert, that will become apparent, but I have had quite a lot of experience at school covering GCSEs. So that's what I think I can bring. So first of all, I suppose I would say on behalf of myself and other people, I want to express, gratitude for everybody who's put in a massive effort towards education and learning, despite the pandemic. People would have us that it's over, but we are still seeing the effects, and particularly with this year group who were severely disrupted by the pandemic. So what we'll do, I'll go through a few things that I think might be relevant, and then if you've got any questions, I would love to see them and I'll try and answer them. So the first thing is about pre-exam nerves and obviously pre-results nerves rather, and that will be a problem for lots of students and for lots of teachers potentially. So there's issues in terms of students requiring grades to get onto sixth form or college, and in terms of grades for maths and science, demanding perhaps a grade 7 in order to A level, things like that. And a lot hangs obviously on the English and maths. And what do people do in terms of pre-results nerves? It'd be interesting to hear about what you do for your students. I know for our students, we identify our students quite early, during the GCSEs, and we look at who might be our vulnerable students. And what will happen on results day or before results day, we have already put in plans in place to make sure they've made appropriate choices for their post-16 places, which we feel they can get on with the grades they're going to get, or we think they're going to get. In terms of on the day for GCSE results, we make sure that students come into we try and keep it low key, and students can come in and, there's not a specific time. We have a window in which students can come in, collect their results. They may, if they choose, open them there, or they can drift off. We have support staff available, and they know who our identified vulnerable students are. And we also have people from post-16 providers. So if students don't quite get the grades they want, or actually have changed their mind and get better grades than they thought, there's always somebody there to talk to. So it's really important for us in our school. We're only 11 to 16 school. So Bristol's got a huge range of post-16 providers, lots of colleges, lots of sixth forms, and lots of other providers. And we have a whole range from slightly disappointed students who haven't got their grades, think it's the end of the world because they perhaps haven't got their maths or their English grades at what they need. Or there's other students who've overperformed and actually have changed their choices as a result, and they want to move on to a different course. And the fact that having the post-16 providers there in the building can reassure people straight away, which has been really useful for us. So it'd be interesting to see what you do with your students. I wonder if there's any questions or comments. I think it's really important for us as well to kind of keep it in perspective. They're important exams that I think there's a lot of pressures built up on the day through the national media, and they'll report a certain level of GCSE results. There's also been pre-reporting about the changes in grade boundaries. So there's a level of stress in place even before the results come out. And obviously, I suppose it's only natural that there'll be a lot of emphasis on the high achieving students who get lots of nines, or in the case of A levels, lots of A's and A stars. But for other students, their aspirations are different and their achievement is different. And actually, it's really important that we remember that and celebrate all our students who've done well. So I can't see any comments, but that's fine. I will carry on. In terms of on results day, I don't know what you do in your schools. In your schools on results day, we have a plan. We get students in from 10:30 till 12. We alert them to this over the summer, and we get them in. They've still got hoodies to pick up, which is an incentive for some students to come in. And they come in to the school and they collect their results in an envelope. As I said, they have a chance to speak to us, to speak to post-16 providers. We have a photographer there if they're related. Obviously, we're sensitive, so if they haven't got the results they want, we leave them alone. We used to provide a nice green van. I'm not sure the total benefit of that, but it was a nice touch, I think, occasionally. So that's on results day. Obviously, we have a reasonable number of students who don't appear on results day, and we send off their results by post. So that's our pattern for our results day. We invite staff in. I don't know what happens in your context, but we invite everybody in. Nobody's under any pressure to turn up to school, but a lot of staff do choose to come in, and it makes a massive difference. It's really nice as a teacher to come in and see the end result of your work with students and see them get their results and see how pleased they are, because it makes it all worth it. And also at the other end, I think we staff are very good at providing reassurance about, if the results aren't quite what they wanted, it's quite easy to catastrophize, and actually there are lots of options. So in our context, there are lots of options for A-level science. There are several colleges, there are lots of sixth forms. And so it's worth, one part of our role on the day is telling students that there are lots of options and it's not the end of the world. And they can, the good thing about our post-16 providers, they can provide that instant reassurance. So that's kind of where we are on results day. It'd be interesting to see what you do in your schools. I mean, I know for sure that some schools are fantastic at posting all the results all over social media, and they're absolute experts at it. I sometimes think we should up our game, but they have lots of videos on Twitter and kind of make a big razzmatazz, which is quite nice, I think. But the biggest thing of all, I think, is to make our students feel reassured. And we are, as a 11 to 16 school, it would be easy for us to, for students to feel that they finish with us. And what we always try and do is maintain the fact that they are still our students, even though they finished their GCSE courses, and we still care. And we still want them to get a great post-16 choice. And I think that's important that we share that with them. In terms of what's next, so what do we do with our students in terms of following results day? As I've mentioned, in our context, we are not a 11 to 18 provider. So it's really important for us, because we get measured on it. And if you're an 11 to 16 school, you'll know this, that obviously one of the measures of school performance is what students then go on and do and whether they stay in education. So there's a good reason. There's lots of good reasons, mostly for the predominantly for the students, but we want to make sure that students made the right choices for post-16 education. And the purpose of this, the reason we do this and the reason we build up to this is during year 10 and year 11, and actually early in year 9, we want to make sure students have got a really good career in post-16 education. So then when it actually comes to them making their choices in year 11, that they've made the right choice that's appropriate for them. And I think actually that's a key part for any school, really, is in terms of getting the careers education right and making sure that students are aware that the vast range of post-16 choices that they can make, which are, they are greater than ever before. And actually, it's about knowing the pupils and knowing what will help them prosper and do well after school. And it doesn't have to be a conventional route of going into sixth form necessarily, or college. There are so many routes out there now that part of our next step is to educate the students and educate ourselves, because it's always changing. Bristol has got 10s, 20, multitudes of providers, and it's part of our job to know who they are and what they provide in order that we can then pass it on to our students. And I wonder if that's the same with you in your context. We have the benefit of being in a big city, and therefore there are a lot of choices. There's a question in terms of what do I do if I decide to resit some GCSEs. So I think for us, we always, our advice to students is always to think about how many GCSEs it would involve resitting. Obviously, in terms of English and maths, you are compelled to keep on studying those, and actually colleges and sixth forms seem to be very good at providing routes through to resitting some GCSEs. For other things, in terms of if it's science, for example, if they've got aspirations in science and they've got to resit multiple, if they're doing combined or triple science, I think it depends the exact context. But I think in some situations, we wouldn't always advise against resitting. We might think about choosing another course, which might be more appropriate to their grade set. In our personal experience, we found that actually students have tended to do okay in English and maths, haven't always been more successful if they're doing multiple resits. So that's our situation. Obviously, if you've got a sixth form, the situation is slightly different because you're staying in the same educational environment. Now, I can keep on talking, and I probably will, but I wonder if anybody else has got any questions. It'd be interesting to know, your personal experience. I'm talking to early careers teachers today, and it'd be interesting to see what colleagues, in terms of nerves. Are you nervous as a teacher? I think people do get nerves. It's kind of, it marks the end of the holidays for a lot of people, and a time when they start focusing on the year ahead. And I think and I know that actually the grades your school gets have a big impact on the year ahead for the school. And so it'd be interesting to see what your personal situation is and how it is in your educational context. Okay. So in terms of how it might have been different for all of us during pandemic, it is interesting to see what people have done to support their students. Obviously, we've just taught a year group. You've all just taught a year group that have been through a huge amount of disruption. And actually, this year 11 that they've just been through is probably the first uninterrupted year they've had since I think about year 8. And so you've had to explore different strategies and all the implications that the pandemic has meant for teaching and for predicting grades. So one of the things that might be worth discussing is how confident do you feel about how your predictions will translate into actual grades? I know that pre-pandemic, for a lot of people, it almost becomes quite a science. So actually people were really good at predicting final grades based on the assessments they've done through the year 10, year 11. Obviously there are there's been a break in that, in a sense, because we've done teacher assessed grades, and also the grade boundaries are changing. So there's lots of factors that will influence the final grade. But I wonder how people feel about that. If it's your first set of GCSE results since the first year group you've taken through, the first group you've taken through a GCSE, it'd be really interesting to see how you're feeling and whether you're nervous or anxious about that. A question about grades. Obviously, you may want to change your choice of college or sixth form. Can you do this depending on your grades? Yes, you can. sixth forms and colleges, in my experience and our experience here in Bristol, are really keen and open, and are expecting students to change, and are willing to speak to them, and welcome them with open arms, and are really flexible about this. So I think it's always worth talking to your post-16 provider and discussing your options, because it's not set in stone, and they are willing to be flexible. A good comment about somebody who swapped from a core subject to another subject, so to swap from English to health and social care, and a feeling of being happier this year because they're no longer core. That's really interesting. I think there's a lot of pressure on core subjects to deliver, and that pressure is felt by the students, I think, and it's also felt by the teachers who deliver those subjects. Okay, a really good comment as well in terms of grades from a colleague. Really impressed with the way SLT used 2019 grade boundaries and ignored 2021 ones, which we know was slightly higher than before, and that helped make realistic predictions. Yeah, that's what we did in our school, and hopefully, Thursday will tell us whether it's true, and whether it pays off or not. But yeah, I think that's a good way forward, and having a realistic view. Thank you, Holly. I hope this is helping you and other people. As I said, I'm not the expert. I'm just one person who's had some experience with this. In terms of revision, so in terms of revision and GCSE tips, we started at the start of this year, and we do something called prep time. So all our year 11s on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of each week have an extra hour of teaching. And that happens after school. It's not after school because it's part of the school day. So they have an extended school day. So they have an hour each, and they are selected by their subject teachers. And not everybody, it's not a whole class. So if it's your science class, your whole science class does not come back. So selected students who may be in need of particular help with a particular topic would come back and have a prep session with the teacher for an hour after school. And that would happen on a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And we found that to be really positive. Partially because I think it's a good thing to do, because you're concentrating on areas of weakness and you're helping students, and I really think they appreciate that help. It's not a punishment. You're saying, actually, look, you've got this area of weakness, let's work on it and see if we can improve it. And if they can see that cycle of improvement, that's been really powerful. So that's one thing we've done in terms of revision and resits, and that's been running for a few years at our school now, and that's really helped post-pandemic, I think. The other thing in terms of revision and resits, I'm sure you'll be familiar with the work of the learning scientists in terms of things like interleaving and dual coding, and we've done a lot on that. We've also been really clear that actually it's not something you can end load at the end of year 11, and it's something that's got to start. Really, those are skills that you've got to start introducing in year 7. So one of the things we're doing at our school is making sure that we have a build up to every set of exams in our school, and we have revision, and that revision is through a spiral process. So actually, they will talk about interleaving and space practice in year 7, perhaps on a certain level, and they will revisit that all the way through year 8, year 9, year 10, year 11, so that actually when they get to year 11, it's all embedded, and they are familiar with it, and it's not coming in, March and April of their exam year. So that's one of the things we do, which I think really helps with exam stress, because and also by starting in year 7, they can see that actually it works. We take a leap of faith. So I think some of the revision techniques, in terms of the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve and how you revisit things, sometimes they're a bit counterintuitive, and you don't always think they're going to work. But actually, as a student, I think the most powerful thing is if you do something, you follow a strategy, even if it's something as simple using the Pomodoro technique and studying for 20 minutes at a time, and you follow that and it works for you, then that's really powerful. So those sort of things we try to get in really early in school. Other things we try to do that I think reduce exam stress are sitting exams in the hall in the sort of situation they'll be. So when it comes to the exams in the GCSEs, they're familiar with it, they like the routine, and we're really clear about the routine. And I think that helps because it just removes one sort of barrier, one stressful situation. We have a great exams officer who's really clear and really caring, but quite firm in terms of what we expect. And that's from year 7 upwards. And I think that really helps. So it no longer becomes a massive stressful event. When they finally do get into the exam hall in their GCSEs, they're familiar with it. The other thing in terms of revision and resits and revision is kind of really clear communication about, and one of the things I think our students really appreciated in knowing exactly when the exams are, when the building up is, when the mock exams are, and knowing that at the start of the year. In fact, knowing that from the start of year 10 and before that, so they know there'll be exams. We publish the information they need to revise early so they can get on with it. And we found an awful lot of our students will really engage with that and are really independent learners. Not everybody is, but a lot of people, given the information, given the dates, prepare really well. So that's in terms of revision. I think the other thing about revision is that if we, one of our things that we found really powerful is if we're all talking on from the same hymn sheet in terms of revision. So if we're talking about a particular strategy, so say if you were doing mind mapping or a brain dump, is that we concentrate that or focus on that in school for a while, for a week at a time. So you'd have students would expect to see quite an exposure of that in their lessons. So they go from one lesson where brain dump's mentioned, and they might experience that several times during that week. So it's really clear that they get the techniques involved in doing a brain dump. In terms of another question, can you appeal the grade awarded? Yeah, there's a reasonably complicated process in terms of grade appeals. The first step is obviously appeal to your school, and the school consider that, and then a step after that is to the exam board. But there is a really clear process. It's available. It should be available on your school website, but also it's really clear on the exam board website. And one of my students is extremely anxious about his results. Is there anything you recommend I do to support him on Thursday? Yeah, I just think is the one thing we can really help with exam results is kind of keep an eye on the big picture. These are GCSE results. I know it's easy to say, but of course it's not the end of the world. It's easy for us to say that as adults, but I think one of the things that really reassures students is to know that they've always got options. We have had students in the past who, for one reason or another, have left with very few grades, but there are access courses to college and elsewhere that are really good. And actually, it's not the end of things. It's a blip in the road. And I think it's about that story and about, I'm not suggesting you do some sort of Jeremy Clarkson style posting and say, look at me, I got nothing and here I am now. I just think actually if students want to do well, they can have, because of the context when they took the GCSE results, I mean, people have come from loads of different, situations. We teach in the school where there's area quite high disadvantage, and we've been through a pandemic. So students just getting to the results, getting to the exams and doing the exams is amazing in itself. And I think it's trying to keep that idea in mind when you're supporting your students. And also I think it's to be honest and don't promise students things that are just not going to be possible. Don't say everything's going to be, there are always options. They might not get exactly what they want and they may have to change their plan slightly, but there are always definitely options. I think the worst thing is to kind of brush it off with some platitudes. It's easily done, but I think about being honest and about actually working with the student to find the route that they want. And I think that will really support students on Thursday. I also think, having access to post-16 providers and actually be willing to, if you're not a post-16 school, being willing to be an advocate for students, because I think one of the things that they might be unwilling to do is phone their college or sixth form because they're just too nervous to make a phone call to another person. And yet that might sound daft, but actually that might be the one thing that blocks them having a sensible conversation about their onward route. And one of the things we do is by having them in the school, having those post-16 providers in the school, we can easily have a kind of casual conversation that turns into finding a solution for them post-16. So hopefully that answers that question. I wonder if there are any more questions for anybody. I don't want to dry up completely because there's lots to talk about. There's always lots to talk about school. You know, it'd be interesting to see if there's anything people would have done differently or anything they've learned, particularly during this year, that they'd apply to next year or be happy to share with people. Because, you know, although we think we've had a good year in lots of respects, we haven't had the results yet. We always know that we can improve. And we also know that, you know, our cohorts change significantly. We've just had a year 11 group through. We've got another year 11 group coming up who are, they're lovely. They're, you know, they're great students, but they're very different to the previous year group. They've had a different experience at school. They've had a different experience because of COVID. They've come from different primary schools. So even though we're in the same school, doing the same GCSEs, an awful lot has changed even before we start delivering the GCSEs. So I wonder if that's the same for you. I wonder if anyone's got any tips for teacher anxiety, because I know we feel it. There's a wider thing, you know, there's teacher anxiety about going back to the results and going back to school. So I hope you're feeling positive. It's, you know, it's really important that we remember that it's an amazing thing that we do, and so, you know, bear that in mind. A lot of students will really appreciate the support you've put in. If you're feeling, you can see the link along the bottom now. There's a really good support for teacher staff wellbeing. You know, nobody wants you to feel stressed, but education by its very nature can induce levels of stress. So if you do feel, you know, affected in any way, that's a really good starting link. So I think we're getting towards the end. This has gone really quickly. I do apologise if it just sounds like me talking a lot, but it's really interesting to talk to other colleagues. There's another link there you see on the screen about supporting teenage mental health. That's something, you know, that'd be a really interesting other forum, because that's something we've really had to consider this year. Perhaps I haven't mentioned that as much as I could have, but I think there's that needs a whole session devoted to supporting teenage mental health and the strategies that are used. But that's perhaps for another time. But there's a good link there if you want some resources. And well, thank you for all of you to contributing. The live stream has been recorded and will be made available on my college over the next few days. You will find all the other recordings and other resources on the My College platform. If you haven't checked into it and you're a chartered teacher, or you know, otherwise not chartered teacher, you remember the Chartered College of Teaching, there are amazing resources. So dip in, and might give you some inspiration for the start of term. Thank you for joining me, and I really hope to see you all again at a future Chartered College of Teaching event. So thank you very much.